Tonight on Reel to Reel, we'll see some examples of beauty formed in darkness.
Father Tom Legere will talk about spiritually healing the body.
We'll hear the story of the first American Indian considered for sainthood.
And Father John Scarcia takes a look at the lighter side.
We'll take a tour of the Christian Brothers Winery.
And see a staircase that legend holds was built by St. Joseph.
Hello, I'm Father Dave McGowan.
And I'm Isabel Garvey-LaGrosse. Welcome to Reel to Reel.
As many of you are aware, Beethoven was almost deaf when he wrote the Ninth Symphony, and Helen Keller, blind, deaf, and mute, became a great communicator.
In our first story tonight, we're going to meet an artist who is blind and partially disabled, but whose gifts and determination should inspire us all.
It's said sometimes that art is the window to the soul. If that's true, then the eyes and the hands of the artist are what create that window. Like his artwork, Michael Naranjo exudes a peaceful serenity. But within the calmness that surrounds this Pueblo Indian artist, you can also sense a powerful inner spirit. A drive that has taken him from a hospital ward in Vietnam to a home that he designed himself, to a career as a nationally recognized sculptor. All this, even though war injuries have left him with a severely crippled arm and total blindness.
After I was blinded, I didn't know what I was going to do. I was uncertain about everything. I remember laying in a hospital bed in Japan, I think it was, and thinking, flies can see, rabbits can see, why can't I see? I've had my moments of being bitter, but for the most part, it's a challenge of sorts. So rather than becoming totally frustrated, angry, turn it around and make a game out of it.
In the hospital, a general's wife approached Naranjo and asked if there was anything he wanted. He hesitated for a moment, and then he said, yes, he would like some clay.
And laying in a hospital bed, I proceeded to make a couple of small figures. I found out that I could still make sculptures with one hand and with no eyes. So the process started.
This process of creating sculpture by touch alone has evolved. Naranjo isn't sure whether this is just a natural evolution or the result of a special trip that he and his wife made to Italy. Naranjo and his wife, Lori, traveled to the Vatican for a special audience with Pope John Paul II, where Naranjo presented His Holiness with a gift.
I remember reading about Michelangelo, and he met the Pope, so I thought I should do it someday. But no, some years ago I made this sculpture of a crucifix, and we decided that it would be nice if the Holy Father had a sculpture of mine, and the crucifix, was the ideal sculpture to give to him. The Holy Father was all the things that people think that the Pope should be. He was gentle, warm, sincere.
Meeting the Holy Father was a dream come true. But Michael started thinking about another dream of his. He wanted to touch with his own hands the immortal work of another sculptor, Michelangelo. Not knowing what to expect, he asked permission. The next thing he knew,
all of a sudden there I was, crawling around on the Moses. And the piece was massive, it was huge. It was what I always wanted to do, and I was doing it. My dream had come true.
He also got to touch an exact replica of Michelangelo's Pieta, as well as many other great works of art.
I don't think very many other people have touched Michelangelo's pieces in that way, to the point of completely touching them from head to toe. I get all excited when I think about it.
The idea of others touching his own work also excites Naranjo.
Oh, definitely. I want other people to touch things that I make, because I made the pieces by touch, totally by touch. I think people get a different perspective when they touch pieces.
As a Pueblo Indian in New Mexico, Naranjo is deeply rooted in his heritage, and his work draws heavily on the spirit of that culture.
Being raised on the Pueblo, on a reservation, you know, watching the Indian dancers has influenced my work a lot. If I know what this dancer, Indian dancer, is thinking, or where he's coming from, hopefully I can project more feeling coming out of this cold piece of bronze to give it a little bit more life. If it's an eagle, usually the accentuation of the wings, the motion, or a sculpture that I made of my wife and my daughter, a feeling of just a soft, gentle feeling, the connection between a mother and a child. And that piece I named Circle of Love.
Lori, besides being a wife to Michael and the mother of his children, is an excellent weaver in her own right. She's also an indispensable business partner. Lori also helped build their house, according to the designs that her husband made.
My wife plays a very, very important part in the whole of things, because she makes it possible for me to do what I want to do.
Naranjo wonders sometimes what his wife and daughters look like.
It would be nice to see my two girls, but there's nothing I can do about it. So I really can't worry about it. It would be nice to see them. It would be nice to see my wife. It would be nice to look at my work as other people who can see look at them. I guess I can't really worry about things that are impossible. I will never be able to see them, so I can't worry about it.
When I was younger, I was a dreamer. I had my visions to lead me on, and I could be all that I dreamed upon. And life was as easy as breathing in and breathing out. And if I could follow that rhythm through, all of my dreams inside will come true. Do, do, do.
I want what everyone else wants, peace, happiness, and I think I have it here. I love my work, I love my wife, and I love my girls, and it's really super. I just love it all. I'm happy. I can't, I don't want to change anything. I've got everything I want.
There's more to come on Reel to Reel. Coming up, we'll have Father Tom Legere, A Miracle Staircase, and Kateri Tekakwitha. So stay with us.
Belle, if I gave you 2 pieces of wood and told you to put them together, how would you do it?
Well, I don't know. I'd just hammer in a few nails or glue them together.
But what if you had no hammers, no nails, and no glue?
Well, then I couldn't. It would take a miracle.
That's right.
In 1852, the Sisters of Loretto traveled across the country in covered wagons to establish a school in Santa Fe, New Mexico. 21 years after the sisters arrived in Santa Fe, they commissioned builders to create a Gothic chapel modeled after Sainte-Chapelle in Paris. After 5 years of construction, the chapel was nearing completion when the sisters realized that they'd been left with no way to get from the main church up to the choir loft. The chapel was so small that a conventional stairway would take up too much room. Not knowing how their problem could possibly be solved, the sisters began a novena, 9 days of prayers, asking for help from St. Joseph, the carpenter. On the 9th day, an old gray-haired man appeared at their door asking for work. His only possessions were a hammer, a saw, and a carpenter's square. With only these tools and tubs of water to soak the wood, the stranger worked for 6 months to build a spiral staircase to the chapel's choir loft. Architects, carpenters, and engineers from all over the world have studied the staircase over the years, and none have been able to explain how it was built or why it still stands. Some experts say that it should have crashed in a heap the first time it was used. Yet it is still solid after 85 years of daily use. No nails were used in its construction. Only wooden pegs hold it together. The staircase is 23.5 feet high and makes 2 perfect 360-degree turns. There is no center support for the spirals. Their entire weight seems to rest solely on the floor. There are exactly 33 steps in the staircase, a number which some believe represents the number of years that Christ spent on earth. The wood is not native to New Mexico, and although scientific tests have been done, the type of wood has never been identified. When the stairway was completed, the old man disappeared as quietly as he'd come, without seeking either gratitude or payment. Some believe that the staircase was an answer to the sisters' prayers to St. Joseph. Some say it was a lucky coincidence. And some even believe that the old carpenter was St. Joseph himself. No matter the belief, both scientist and faithful agree that the spiral staircase in the Loretto Chapel of Our Lady of Light is a miracle.
There are only a few of what you would call American saints, among them Bishop John Newman, Mother Cabrini, and Elizabeth Seton. They were either born here or traveled here to do their religious work. Tonight, we have the story of Blessed Kateri Tekakwitha, who may one day become the first true American saint.
It was in this beautiful valley, where the Mohawk River flows peacefully through central New York, that a young girl suffered the persecution of her community. When she was 4 years old, smallpox killed her mother, father, and baby brother, leaving her with a face disfigured by scars and eyes that could hardly see. After living a life of ridicule, punishment, and abuse, she fled to Canada, where she died at the age of 24. When Mohawk Indian maiden Kateri Tekakwitha died in 1680, those who surrounded her were astonished when, a few moments after her death, a look of peaceful contentment overcame her, and the scars which had deformed her in life disappeared from her face. During her lifetime, Kateri suffered persecution not only for her physical deformities, but for her dedication to Christianity as well. The ideas of the Jesuit missionaries were not accepted by most of the Mohawk people, so it was against the will of her guardians that Kateri sought to learn Christian ideals from the black robes. Kateri continued to receive the sacraments and became the first of her people to make a vow of virginity for her faith. Mohawk elders tried to punish, chastise, trick, and even starve her, but to no avail. Kateri continued in her prayers. The abuse took its toll on her already weak body, and the missionaries finally convinced her to flee to Caughnawaga, Canada. There, she joined a community of other Native Americans who were also persecuted Christians. Shortly thereafter, finally among friends, she died. A small chapel now stands on the hill near Auriesville, New York, where she was born. In 1980, Pope John Paul II beatified Kateri Tekakwitha, and those promoting her canonization expect that she will soon become the first Native American saint.
She was obviously a person strong in spirit. And as Father Tom Legere points out in tonight's Relationships, a strong inner spirit is the beginning of a strong body.
Greetings in the Lord. One of the great things about the body is that it never lies. It is always trying to tell us something about ourselves. Of course, sometimes the only message that the body has to communicate is that it has just caught the flu or some other highly communicable disease. Sometimes we just get sick because an illness happens to be going around. Often, however, there is a very close connection between one's illness and the inner struggles that may be going through a person at the time. It is what is called a psychosomatic illness. Sometimes we mistakenly think that a psychosomatic illness is just a figment of the imagination. Nothing could be further from the truth. A psychosomatic illness is very, very real, but it is not caused by a virus or an infection, but rather by some inner turmoil that may be bothering us. How common are these psychosomatic illnesses? I've seen estimates that as high as 80% of our illnesses are in some way related to what is going on within our minds, our emotions, or our spirits. There is nothing morally wrong about having a psychosomatic illness. Its presence simply indicates that we don't have it all together. It just means that we are human. I once did some research on the religious conversion of St. Augustine. Apparently, he was a victim of a psychosomatic illness that affected his chest area. Augustine used to make his living with his lungs. He was a great teacher of rhetoric, but eventually he came to see his vocation as a hollow one. As the moment of his conversion grew closer, the pain in his chest got more excruciating. It was almost as if his body were telling him that a life of rhetoric was not for him. Immediately after his conversion, his chest pain disappeared. The two parts of my body that react to stress are my back and my stomach. When my workload gets too heavy, my back begins to tighten. This is my body telling me that I am breaking my back. When I am facing an undesirable situation, my stomach begins to do flip-flops. This is my body telling me that I am having trouble stomaching the situation. Tune into what your body is telling you, and don't just pop a pill to cover over the symptom. Find out what is really going on inside, and ask the Lord for the healing that you need.
If you would like a transcript of Father Legere's message, contact us here at Reel to Reel, and we'll be happy to send you one.
Coming up, we'll have Father John Scarcia, and we'll be visiting behind the scenes at the Christian Brothers Winery. So stay with us.
Hi, I'm Father John Scarcia on the lighter side. Right now, I am in a first grade classroom, and believe it or not, all of us at one time used to be able to fit into these desks. They would hold everything, even our lunch. And this looks like one that I left at my desk when I was in first grade. But as I look around, I remember that our days in Catholic elementary schools were days of formation. Sure, there was the education and the discipline, but most of all, there was the groundwork of religious formation and tradition brought into our lives. Prayers were learned, and the elements of our faith were taught. And even though religious education never stops in a person's life, and though we are continually encouraged to become more informed about our faith through secondary education and through parish programs, the groundwork laid in these classrooms has formed a tradition where families want to pass on their faith to their children. And so here will be sitting the future of the church. Our children will carry on the traditions of our faith from these very desks, even if we can't fit in them anymore.
I can't believe that I ever fit in one of those desks.
Neither can I. Right now, let's travel to the West Coast to see how a small group of religious men have turned a few acres of grapes into a multi-million-dollar enterprise.
It has been said that the Napa Valley is a place created on a day when God was smiling. Winemaking is an art and it's a science, and it's a vocation to those people who really feel called to do it.
More than 100 years ago, an order of Catholic brothers bought a piece of land in California to build a school. They found 12 acres of grapes on the property, a discovery which eventually would make them famous, not for their school, but for their fine wines.
It's my pleasure to welcome you to Christian Brothers. The Napa Valley is 32 miles long, 5.5 miles wide, and in this valley we produce premium wine. Now this building behind me is owned and operated by the Brothers of the Christian Schools, a teaching order of the Catholic Church, better known as the Christian Brothers. We have 5 wineries. They're all in California, 3 in the Napa Valley, 2 in the San Joaquin Valley. We make our brandy in Reedley, California, 20 miles east of Fresno.
Beginning by only making wine for their own dinner table, the Christian Brothers now produce more than 1 million cases of wine each year. After paying their costs of operation, including federal, state, and local taxes, the net profits of the corporation are used to support the Christian Brothers schools all along the West Coast.
I have tasted wine for 49 plus years, and I have blended wine and analyzed wine, and have done a lot of those same things in relation to grapes and grape juice. And I've studied vineyards and grape varieties and growing locations, the different situations of vineyards. I've studied all those things for all these 49 plus years. So if I'm not considered to be an expert, then I've been losing a lot of time somewhere.
If there's one person that embodies the spirit and goals of the winery, it is 74-year-old Brother Timothy, Vice President and Cellar Master of Christian Brothers. Brother Timothy was teaching high school chemistry when his superiors asked him to take over as wine chemist for the winery. His expertise in the sciences and 50 years of experience have made Brother Timothy one of the most respected authorities in the California wine industry.
Paul wrote to Timothy, my patron saint, told him to take a little wine for thy stomach's sake and thy frequent infirmities. So I like that, and since my name is Timothy, I have to do what Paul told me to do. There are more than 500 known different chemical compounds present in grape juice and wine. So wine is a very complex thing. Some people, even medical people thinking of wine, have wrote maybe rather romantically something to the effect that wine is about the only thing that is as complex as blood.
Hilaire Belloc, a convert to Catholicism, wrote, "Wherever the Catholic sun doth shine, I've always found laughter and good red wine. At least I've always found it so. Benedicamus Domino."
Next week, we begin a special series of shows that take a look back over the history of reel-to-reel and rerun some of our best stories.
Next Sunday, we'll take a look at two nuns working in prisons to bring hope behind bars.
And we'll travel to Allentown, Pennsylvania to see how a local college breathes life into the Gospels of St. Mark.
And we'll meet an unusual priest called the Smiling Padre. Let us know what you think of Reel to Reel. Write to us at 222 North 17th Street, Philadelphia, PA 19103.
To your health. Good night.
Good night, and remember, Jesus is Lord.